The NFL dished out a resolution for Jalen Carter after he spit on Dak Prescott. Y'all can't believe it's something that's a little slight. Not even gonna lie to you. And Lions head coach Dan Campbell guarantees a win versus the Chicago Bears this Sunday. Y'all know we're gonna talk about it, break it all down, but you gotta hear the music first.
Welcome to your number one spot for all NFL news and content, NFL Central.
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back into another episode of NFL Central, your number one spot for everything NFL. I'm your host here, Bobby. So if you tuned in, love talking football, ready to talk football, and just enjoy talking football, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, man. This week, the first week of the NFL is wrapping up. Well, has wrapped up. And now we're moving on to week 2. We've seen a number of great games. We've seen a number of things happen. We've seen a lot of people look good. We've seen a lot of people look bad and mid. But now it's time to talk about Jalen Carter, man. The NFL pretty much came down and pretty much gave us a resolution for Jalen Carter after not before even playing a snap on the field. Literally the second play of the game, Jalen Carter was disqualified from the game after he spit on Dak Prescott's jersey. And me and my man Steve-O, we went at him and we was like, bro, that's totally unacceptable. You can't be doing bonehead stuff like that. And the NFL, we know they had to come to a resolution, and that resolution for Jalen Carter is this. Since he was disqualified from the game, they are counting that as a 1-game suspension, but he will also forfeit his game check for that game versus the Dallas Cowboys. So what does that mean for Jalen Carter? You good to go now versus the Kansas City Chiefs in a game that a lot of us are going to be watching, a lot of us going to be paying attention to, just to see how the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs compare to each other this upcoming week. Jalen Carter is a guy that he had his troubles coming into this league, has pretty much stayed silent for the most part. But that was a play that, drew everybody to regurgitating things that transpired before he even entered the NFL when things went on down in Georgia. So I say for the NFL, I'm not mad at the decision. And this is why I'm not mad at the decision. He missed the whole entire game. So it's like, it's like he was suspended for one game anyway. And then they probably looked at the fact that Dak Prescott, though he did not spit on Jalen Carter, he did spit on the ground towards Jalen Carter. Now, we could play the what if game, but I still think that's Dak Prescott. When you spit at someone, whether that's intentional or not, spitting in the direction of someone is just bad, bro. Because I feel like Dak Prescott actually could have turned around and just spit on the ground that way, or simply just put his head down and spit directly near his feet. But it's spitting to where that trajectory and went somewhere else with the spit. Hey, I say that could have been that could have provoked Jalen Carter to come back and retaliate. Still bad on Jalen Carter's part on this, but you still kind of understand. And when you look at the situation for what it is, you say, hey, he could have provoked him. Yes, Jalen Carter's actions were uncalled for and unnecessary and just flat out disgusting. But hey, the 1-game suspension plus forfeiting your game check. I think the game check was a little bit over $50,000. So hey, he lose a little bit of money on, and he went through, an entire game in the locker room, getting ready and dressed and watching in the locker room. You know what I'm saying? Instead of having an opportunity to play in Brazil on that field. So it is what it is for him. I'm not necessarily mad at the decision, but I think it's fair. I think it's fair, bro. We typically see things like that in other leagues or in cases to where if guys are, ejected, very early in the game, they count it as a 1-game suspension. And I don't think it warrants a second game or anything like that. So y'all let me know your thoughts and everything down below regarding Jalen Carter. But now let's move on to Lions head coach Dan Campbell, who is cashing a check He cashing the check. He cashing the check. Dan Campbell has come out and guaranteed a win versus the Chicago Bears. Now, there's nothing that I can really stand on or really defend for the Chicago Bears other than a defense looked like they was ready to go for game one. The offense, however, after the script went, after they ran out the scripted plays, the offense stalled out, looked stagnant, looked horrible. Caleb Williams missed a bunch of passes or whatnot. But guaranteeing a win when you don't play on the football field, that's a check that your ass can't cash a lot of times, Dan Campbell. But Dan Campbell went on and said this in front of the media. Maybe it's some bulletin board material for the Chicago Bears to come out and steal a victory in Detroit. But Dan Campbell said this: Ben is my friend, talking about Ben Johnson. He's always going to be my friend, but nothing about that's going to change. He said, we're going in, getting ready to play Chicago. We're going to win this game. We have to. So he put it on wax. If you don't know me, I always talk about when they do a lot of talking or a player does a lot of talking, my saying is guys got to put it on wax. So for Dan Campbell to go out there and guarantee a win versus the Chicago Bears, hey, buddy, your team better put it on wax. You don't play anymore. You're not going to go out there and make a pass. You're not going to go out there and make a catch. You're not going to go out there and tackle anybody. So your team better come ready to play, because your offensive coordinator and Johnny Morton, he looked real mid in week one. Now, that's the same thing can be said about the Chicago Bears offense in the second half of that game, to where they pretty much gave up a win to the Minnesota Vikings and a young quarterback in J.J. McCarthy because Caleb Williams played so bad. But then it comes down to you guaranteeing something, and it's not necessarily fitting for, for you to go out there. Now, Detroit is a tough place to play in. It's going to be extremely loud. The Detroit Lions been smelling themselves these last few years, simply because they have a right to. They've been dominating the NFC North, and now they feel like teams are kind of catching up. Minnesota hasn't been going, from that discussion over the last few years with their constant changes of quarterbacks. The Green Bay Packers just added on Micah Parsons, and, the Chicago Bears are now leaning on Ben Johnson. And if we're looking on the other side of the football field, Ben Johnson and the Chicago Bears, y'all just going to allow that to happen? Y'all going to allow somebody to guarantee a win, and you think that you finna go ahead and not show up? What's going to happen in this game, in my prediction, I think that this game is going to be high emotion, because we understand that the Detroit Lions still have Super Bowl aspirations, while the Chicago Bears just got embarrassed. Both teams got embarrassed, if we're keeping it real, but one team has higher expectations than the other, in my personal opinion. Chicago Bears, they understand that there's a process to this, but the Detroit Lions, they completely let one go last year when they lost to the Washington Commanders. So how do both teams approach this? Simply because no team wants to go down 0-2. Now, when it comes to the Chicago Bears, there's expected, I think the expectation is that there's going to be some growing pains throughout this season. But for the Detroit Lions, the expectation is we need to go out there and go and win this division and compete for a championship. I think that's two different levels. So how much pressure, Dan Campbell, did you place on your team by simply saying, I guarantee we win this game? Now, his team can very well go out there and back him up. They very well can do that. But what hit is the Detroit Lions going to take after Dan Campbell guarantees a win, and let's just say that they lose to the Chicago Bears? That is going to hurt that Detroit locker room. I don't necessarily think that that's going to completely take them out of playoff contention, because there's so many games left, and then they'll eventually have to go on a run. But I also think that, hey, guys going to get a little bit more frustrated, especially if the offense stalls out again on the Detroit Lions side. For the Chicago Bears, if you're listening to this, you can come out juiced up. You came out juiced up at home versus the Minnesota Vikings. The defense played extremely well into the fourth quarter. The offense played really, really well until about midway through that second quarter, and it was really, really bad in that third quarter. So how does Ben Johnson go in and correct some things for the Chicago Bears? How does Ben Johnson set himself up to where he can actually go out there and win his first football game as a head coach? That's what it's going to come down to. Ben Johnson knows Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell knows Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson knows um Jared Goff over there. He knows all his tendencies. He knows what he likes and what he doesn't like. Dan Campbell knows what Ben Johnson likes to call and how he thinks when in certain situations. And if we're being quite frank, when we talk about Ben Johnson and what transpired in that game, Ben Johnson kind of locked up and got out coached by Kevin O'Connell. But I think that's something that happens for first time head coaches. They got to learn how to maneuver and work themselves, into being a great head coach, especially after being a great play caller. Now it's not just about worrying about your own self and your own on your or one side of the ball. It comes down to how do you be able to take care of your offense, but then also manage your team because now you're the quote unquote CEO of the team and running things and running the show. But for Dan Campbell, he's been in this spot. He understands what it takes. And I'm pretty sure he riling up his fellas over there in Detroit. It's going to be a hard, tough game at the 1 o'clock slot, Eastern Standard Time for the Chicago Bears versus Detroit Lions, but it's a divisional matchup. Both teams know each other. Yes, there have been some changes, but both teams, they have their struggles that they have to work to. So, again, Dan Campbell, I'm not mad at him for putting out this guarantee. But again, on the flip side, bro, you ain't the one that's out there about to get ready and play. You ain't the one that's about to get ready and play. So it's a thing that the Chicago Bears could utilize to kind of hype themselves up and be able to go out there and compete. But we'll see. Because again, the Chicago Bears quarterback and Caleb Williams really, really let them down in the second half. And a number of other things. Offensive linemen with the pre-snap penalties. And then you got missed field goals. And then you got bad defensive play calls. It was all bad for the Chicago Bears if we're looking at everything in totality. And for the Detroit Lions, what kind of pride do you have after you pretty much only scored 6 points versus the Green Bay Packers? After, having an offense that is so potent that they wasn't able to do anything versus the Green Bay Packers. Everything was short. Everything was very, very quick because the pressure couldn't hold up. And those losses to the offensive line really showed themselves in week 1 to Detroit. But ultimately, we'll see what happens. Dan Campbell guaranteed that win. We're going to see what's to it. But hey, that is it for me today, y'all. I appreciate y'all for tuning in into another episode. Before you get up out of here, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell. And y'all already know, we appreciate y'all over here. Make sure you always love football, and y'all already know we're going to catch y'all on the next one, for sure.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.